When you are prepared, it just makes things go smoother. You can't always control what's going to happen, but at least you feel like, I've done my part. I've learned what I'm supposed to do. I've said my prayers, and I'm ready to go. Lindsay Price used to always say as she stood on the edge of the stage at the Met, Lord, you got me into this, now you get it down. The opposite of being prepared is being unprepared. And everyone who's ever played the piano as beautifully as Tracy plays, or sung like these ladies play, know what it feels like. You have that recurring dream over and over again. As often as you prepare, you have that dream that somebody's going to ask you to do something that you are not prepared to do. And Deborah D'Alessandro, in the theater, what do we call that? When you have that dream that somebody's going to ask you to do something that you're not prepared to do. Anybody know?
Stage fright.
It's called stage fright. It's called the actor's nightmare. You just dream that somebody's going to say, here's the part you've been waiting to play all of your life. Go on and do it with no costumes, no wigs, and no rehearsal. God bless you. See you at the end. My friend Mary Louise was in the original cast of Sweeney Todd. And she had a song in the show. She played a demented character. You know that show very well, don't you? Yes, you do. You know the song I'm about to speak about. She had a song in the show that was a patter song. And a patter song is a song that is spoken so quickly that you only perform it well when people don't get all of the words. And her character, she played a deranged, people thought in the play that she was deranged. But she was really tormented by how evil Sweeney Todd really was. And she had to come out on stage and just scream out these lyrics that to anybody else just seemed like the rantings of a crazy person. But it was because she was tortured by the secret knowledge that she had. And my friend Merle Louise rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed the song because it went so fast and it went so fast, but it never tripped off of her tongue the way she wanted it to. And to make it worse, on the first night that she had to go on, Stephen Sondheim was sitting in the audience. If any of you know Mr. Sondheim, you know that he is notorious for getting on your case if you change a word, if you change an to a the, you can be called up on charges with the union. That is how he is about his music. And she had this song to perform. The song goes like this. Smoke, smoke, sign of the devil, city on fire, witch, witch, smell that? An evil smell, evil night at the Vespers bell, smoke that comes from the mouth of bell, smoke that comes from the mouth of hell, city on fire! That's what she had to come out and say. She couldn't get her mouth to say that to save her life, and all she could think about was Stephen Sondheim was out there in the audience. So she ran out on stage, and when the conductor gave her her cue, she went, city on fire! She spent the next 3.5 hours sure that that first night was going to be her last night. She had the worst actor's night. In spite of all the ways down which Jesus had led the disciples, they were with him when Jesus had turned water into wine at Cana. They were with him when Jesus had healed the lame man at the pool of Bethesda. They were with him when Jesus fed the 5,000 near the Sea of Galilee. They were with him when Jesus walked on water in Capernaum. They were with him when Jesus healed the blind man at the pool of Siloam. They were with him when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead at Bethany. The disciples could not get it through their heads that they were already walking down a clear new path, a clear new way. They were having their own nightmare. They didn't feel prepared. They were having, if you will, a disciple's nightmare. They weren't prepared. They weren't ready. They couldn't understand what Jesus was asking them to do. They couldn't get it through their heads that Jesus was leaving them, and in front of God and everybody else, they were called to follow in his way, from now on healing, proclaiming, preaching, and doing miracles of faith. Jesus said, "You know the way." And they said, "What way?" Jesus had told them that he and God, the Creator, were one. If they had seen him, Jesus, they had seen the Creator. But all the disciples could see was the rough country of the old laws that they could not keep, the backwoods of the oppressive Pharisees, and the wilderness of the Romans. Jesus, they would say, "You call yourself the Son of God. You can do that if you want to. But we are a helpless little band of Hebrew men, and all you really see is that, and all we really see is that you are our little leader, Peter, and our little friend. We don't see the way." When we were little children, like Josephine, and like, what is your grandson's name, Freda? Jeremiah. Once we learn to read and write like those little ones, we have a new job with respect to learning. For the rest of our life, our job after we learn to read and write is learning how to learn. Students studying for the bar exam, or for their paralegal's license, or their realtor's license, or their nurse's license, or their teaching credentials, often do the best if they get together in small groups and practice going over what they think will be on the test. In those study groups, you often hear when other people recall that you may have forgotten or missed. You spend more times on concepts that the teacher may have brushed over but been too busy to cover deeply. You help each other dispel the anxieties and fears, and you replace that anxiety in a study group with a can-do spirit. Have any of you ever studied with other people before? You know how that can work. So it's almost as if you go into a test with a collective brain. You go in with the brain of all the other people who worked on the project with you. It's as if, as author Gar Johnson says, he refers to it as the benefit of study groups as balanced participation, shared openness, intellectual discovery, a heightened sense of values, and if somebody is a really good cook, good warm cookies. Even after 2,000 years, what makes reading the Gospels so exciting and watching the disciples go through the process of learning is that you and I are part of a study group that stretches across time. You and I are here in the Little White Chapel, but we are also sitting there with the disciples at Jesus' feet. And quite possibly, we have a leg up on the disciples because each one of us, thank God, has written our own into the story. We gather here at the Little White Chapel by faith because we believe we see the way. When the disciples ask each other, how can these things be? You and I get to say in the study group, we know, because we have come along these 2,000 years later, and we see that Jesus' love changes lives even in the worst circumstances. When Jesus says, let not your hearts be troubled, yet the disciples respond to him, our hearts are troubled to the level of overwhelm. We disciples say, yes, it's true. Trouble can seem to be overwhelming, but we can tell you, faith in God is the way out of any situation. For over 2,000 years, it has worked out. It will work out. Fred, when you walked into the doctor and the doctor said you could have been dead, and you said, you see those children sitting over here? I've got work to do as a mother and a grandmother. It is not time. Yes, my stomach is filled with blood. Yes, I came in here in an emergency vehicle. But I am a woman of faith. It is not my time. My mother kept my father on his feet for about 10 years past his due date because she was a woman of faith, and she said, oh, I know you've got to take it, but not quite yet. It will work out. When the disciples say, show us the way, when Jesus rather says, show us the way, and the disciples say, we don't know the way, we can turn to the rest of the study group, to the rest of the disciples and say, we know the way, we know the way. The way is not being so prepared that you never make a mistake. Bring on the mistakes. Mistakes are the way to deeper learning. Jesus' way through mistakes is just showing up and being willing, having faith in love and kindness to take the first step, and then the next step, and then the next step, no matter who is watching, no matter who is in the audience. God goes with you all through this life and all through the life to come. That is the way, the truth, and the life. That is the direction towards God's mansion with the many rooms. If you go to the Disciples International website, our identity statement, which is also on the back of our bulletin, is on their page, and it says, we are disciples of Christ, a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. As part of the body of Christ, we welcome all who would come to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. It goes on to say, our vision is to be a faithful, growing church that demonstrates true community, deep Christian spirituality, and a passion for justice. And it ends with this. Our mission is to be and to share the good news of Jesus Christ, witnessing and loving and serving from our doorsteps, from the doorsteps of Little White Chapel to the ends of the earth. It says nothing about being so rehearsed and so prepared that you never make any mistakes, or knowing all the laws, or knowing all the cues. When 9/11 happened, we as a country were devastated. We had never seen such carnage on our home soil. We had never felt so violent. Nobody had a plan for fixing such an awful disaster. Where was the money going to come from? Where would the vision come from? How would we ever feel safe again? And yet here we are, as a country, holding each other a little closer, loving each other a little dearer, and in spite of everything that we have endured, daring to go forward. That is the way and the truth and the life. Having faith where there does not seem to be an open path. Back to my friend, Mary Louise. Those of you who have been in shows know that it is the custom of the director to assemble the cast on stage. And then the director gives notes to individuals in the cast, in the presence of everyone else. So Mary Louise knew that not only was she going to be fired, she was going to be fired in front of God and everybody. Mr. Sondheim came backstage. He walked up to her, and in front of the entire company, he said, I've never heard that song delivered with quite that much spirit. Just for all the details. You and I have been given the Spirit, even the Spirit of the living It is up to us to spend our lives looking and loving in the faces of each other, working on it. Amen? Would you pray? God, sometimes we just say we can't do this. This is a mountain that's too hard to climb. This is a valley that's too deep in which to go. This is a path that I can't see my way through. You have bid us not to come with a GPS or road. You have simply said to us, show up. I am the way, the truth. And so we show up again. And once again, we place our hand in yours, thanking you in advance that by faith, you will show us the path. In your Son's name we pray.